The Blackwood Manufacturing Company had stood on the outskirts of Boston for exactly 100 years. I stared at the faded brick building, its windows grimy with age, trying to see the proud institution my grandfather had built. Instead, all I saw was impending failure. "Another foreclosure notice?" my brother Daniel asked, not looking up from his phone as I walked into what remained of our executive office. The leather chairs were worn, the carpet threadbare. Like everything else in the company, they spoke of former glory slowly decaying. "Third one this month." I dropped the red-stamped letter on his desk. "The bank's running out of patience, Dan." He finally looked up, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the shabby surroundings. "Then sell, Sophie. That's what Margaret and I have been saying for months. Take the developer's offer while we still can." I shook my head, thinking of our grandfather. Alexander Blackwood had built this company from nothing, turning his brilliant mechanical innovations into an industrial empire. Now, 3 years after his death, we were weeks away from bankruptcy. "There has to be something we're missing," I said, moving to the window. "Grandfather wouldn't have wanted us to give up." "Grandfather isn't here," my sister Margaret's voice came from the doorway. She entered in her usual whirlwind of designer perfume and clicking heels. "And his outdated patents aren't worth the paper they're printed on. The development company's offer expires next week. We should take it." I turned to face my siblings, the new generation of Blackwoods. Daniel, the eldest, who'd spent more time on golf courses than factory floors. Margaret, the middle child, who saw the company as nothing more than a line item on her investment portfolio. And me, the youngest, the one grandfather had called the true engineer. "Just give me a few more days," I pleaded. "Let me go through his old workshop one last time. There might be something." "Oh, for God's sake," Margaret interrupted. "Not this again. Sophie, you've been through that dusty old room a dozen times. There's nothing there but broken machines and cobwebs." But there was something, I could feel it. In the months before his death, grandfather had spent countless hours in his private workshop, working on what he called his legacy project. He'd been excited, energized, telling me it would revolutionize everything. Then he died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving behind only locked doors and unanswered questions. "The workshop's been sealed since he died," Daniel reminded me. "Even if there was something valuable in there, the codes died with him." I pulled an old brass key from my pocket, the one grandfather had pressed into my hand the last time I'd seen him. "Not all the doors are locked with codes." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Where did you get that?" "Grandfather gave it to me," I said quietly. "The night before he died." "And you're just mentioning this now?" Daniel stood up, his face flushing. 3 years of watching this company sink, and you had a key to his workshop the whole time?" I met his gaze steadily. "I wasn't ready. He told me I'd know when it was time." "This is ridiculous," Margaret snapped. "We're not in some mystery novel. We're running a failing business that's drowning in debt. If you had access to his workshop all this time, then what?" I challenged. "You've made it clear you think grandfather's work was worthless. Why would you care about a key to his workshop?" The truth was, I'd tried to use the key before. Several times in those first devastating months after his death, I'd stood outside the workshop door, key in hand. But something had stopped me, some instinct that said wait. Now, with bankruptcy looming and developers circling, that same instinct screamed now. "Fine," Daniel said, checking his Rolex. "You have until tomorrow morning. After that, we're accepting the developer's offer. With or without your approval." As majority shareholders, they could do exactly that. I had until tomorrow to save 100 years of family history. The workshop stood separate from the main factory, a small brick building that had been grandfather's sanctuary. The security panel by the door was dark. Whatever codes he'd used had died with him. But next to it, partially hidden behind a rusted drain pipe, was a simple keyhole. The brass key slid in perfectly. Inside, dust motes danced in the beam of my flashlight. The workshop was exactly as he'd left it, work tables cluttered with tools, blueprints covering the walls, and in the center, draped with a heavy cloth, something large and boxy. "What were you working on?" I whispered, moving deeper into the room. My flashlight beam caught something odd, a slight discoloration in the brick wall behind the main workbench. Pressing it revealed a small safe hidden behind a false panel. The key fit there too. Inside was a leather portfolio thick with papers and a sealed envelope with my name on it. My hands trembled as I opened the letter. "My dearest Sophie, if you're reading this, then you've finally found your way to my workshop. I knew you would when the time was right. You were always the one who understood, not just the mechanics of what we built but the heart of it. What you'll find in this portfolio will change everything. But be careful. There are those who would destroy it rather than see it succeed. Trust your instincts as I've always trusted them. All my love, grandfather." I opened the portfolio and gasped. Pages of diagrams, equations, and detailed notes filled my vision. But it was the patent applications that made my heart race, dozens of them, all complete, all revolutionary. He hadn't been working on one project. He'd been documenting dozens of innovations that were decades ahead of their time. Clean energy systems, advanced manufacturing processes, materials that could revolutionize entire industries. And there, stamped across each patent application in red ink, "Approved." My hands shook as I ran preliminary valuations. These patents, they weren't just valuable. They were worth billions. I was so absorbed in the documents that I didn't hear the workshop door open. "Find anything interesting?" I spun around. Daniel and Margaret stood in the doorway, their expressions unreadable in the dim light. "Actually, yes," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Grandfather left something." "We know what he left," Margaret cut in sharply. "We've always known." I stared at them, the implications slowly sinking in. "What do you mean you've always known?" Daniel stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the portfolio in my hands. "Did you really think you were the only one grandfather talked to about his legacy project?" A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the workshop's musty air. "Those patents were never meant to see the light of day," Margaret said coldly. "And if you're smart, little sister, you'll help us make sure they don't." I clutched the portfolio tighter, suddenly understanding why grandfather's letter had warned me about those who would destroy his work. He hadn't been talking about our competitors. He'd been talking about my own family. "What do you mean they were never meant to be found?" I backed away from my siblings, the portfolio pressed against my chest. "These patents could save the company." Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Save it? Sophie, these patents would destroy everything we've worked for." "Worked for?" I felt my back hit the workbench. "The company's going bankrupt. What exactly have you been working for?" Margaret stepped forward, her expensive heels clicking on the concrete floor. "Think, little sister. Why do you think Evergreen Development is so interested in this property? Why they're offering 3 times its market value?" The pieces started falling into place. "The land. There's something here they want." "Rare earth minerals," Daniel confirmed. "Grandfather discovered them years ago, but he was too obsessed with his clean energy dreams to capitalize on it. He wanted to use this land for his sustainable manufacturing facility." Margaret's lip curled. Always the idealist. He didn't understand that sometimes you have to destroy something to build something better. Better. I flipped through the portfolio. "These patents, they're revolutionary. Clean energy systems, sustainable manufacturing processes." "Worthless," Margaret snapped. "Do you have any idea how much mining rights are worth? The development company's ready to pay us $500 million for this land. But not if these patents become public." I stared at them, finally understanding. Because grandfather's clean energy systems would make mining obsolete. "Now you're getting it," Daniel smiled coldly. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to hand over that portfolio, we're going to burn it, and tomorrow we'll sign the development deal. You'll get your share, enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life." "And if I refuse?" Margaret's eyes hardened. "Then we'll tell the board about your theft of company property. After all, those patents belong to Blackwood Manufacturing, not you personally. I'm sure the police would be very interested in corporate espionage." I looked between my siblings, these strangers wearing familiar faces. "You knew. All this time you knew these patents existed. You let the company fail, let people lose their jobs, all so you could make a smart business decision?" Daniel shrugged. "The world runs on profit, Sophie. Grandfather never understood that. I had hoped you would. He understood more than you think." I reached behind me, feeling for the workshop's ancient intercom button. The one that connected to the factory floor where third shift was still working. "What are you doing?" Margaret stepped forward. I pressed the button. The sound of static filled the room. "Making a smart business decision." Daniel lunged for the portfolio but stumbled over a toolbox. Margaret grabbed for my arm but stopped short when I held one of the patents over the workshop's old furnace. "Don't be stupid," she hissed. "Think about what you're doing." "Oh, I am." I raised my voice, knowing the intercom was carrying every word to the factory floor. "I'm thinking about how my siblings knew these patents existed for 3 years. How they let the company nearly go bankrupt, let people lose their jobs all because they made a deal with developers to mine this land." "Turn that off." Daniel's face had gone purple. "I'm thinking about how they were willing to destroy grandfather's life work clean energy patents worth billions, all for a quick mining profit." Margaret's composure cracked. "You little..." The workshop door burst open. Jerry Thompson, our head of security who'd worked for grandfather for 30 years, stood there with several factory workers behind him. "Everything all right, Miss Sophie? We heard some concerning things over the intercom." I smiled. "Actually, Jerry, I'm glad you're here. Could you please escort my siblings to their offices? And make sure they don't leave. I need to make some calls." "You can't do this," Margaret sputtered as Jerry took her arm. "We're majority shareholders." "About that," I pulled one final document from the portfolio. Grandfather's last amendment to the company bylaws. Signed and notarized 3 days before his death. In the event of any attempt to sell the company's land for mining purposes, all shares revert to the minority stockholder. I looked up. That would be me. Daniel's face went white. "He couldn't. That's not legal." "Oh, it's legal." Grandfather may have been an idealist, but he wasn't stupid. He knew exactly what you two were planning. As Jerry led them away, their protests echoing down the corridor, I sank into grandfather's old chair. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. First call, our patent attorneys. Second call, the board of directors. Third call, every major tech company that might be interested in revolutionary clean energy systems. By sunrise, news of Blackwood Manufacturing's breakthrough patents had hit the technology sector. Our stock, worthless yesterday, was soaring. The development company's offer was forgotten as tech giants began a bidding war for licensing rights. 1 week later, I stood in the factory addressing our employees, not as a failed family business, but as a company on the cutting edge of clean energy innovation. "Some of you have worked here for decades," I said, looking at faces that had become family. "You stood by us through hard times, trusted that this company still meant something. Today, I'm proud to announce that Blackwood Manufacturing isn't just saved, we're about to change the world." The cheers were deafening. Daniel and Margaret tried to contest the bylaws amendment, of course. But grandfather's lawyers had been thorough. Their shares were gone along with their dreams of quick mining profits. I found them clearing out their offices the next day. "You could have been part of something amazing," I said from the doorway. "That's what grandfather wanted for all of us." "Oh, spare us the sentimental garbage," Margaret snapped, shoving photos into a box. "You got lucky, that's all." I smiled. "No, I just trusted grandfather's vision. He once told me that true innovation isn't about destroying things for profit, it's about building something that lasts." "And you think you can run this company better than us?" Daniel scoffed. "I think I already am." As they left for the last time, I walked to the workshop. The morning sun streamed through windows now clean of decades of grime. Engineers worked at modern stations, developing prototypes based on